are we yet to create? Because if it's all been created and it cannot be destroyed but only changed in form, so that's an assumption. Is that true or not?
Yeah.
Or is that a yes, both?
Or no, it's both. It's yes. I mean, it's both true and not true, and that's why I train SEALs to be able to change a belief system like they would a pair of clothing, because beliefs are arbitrary and should be used as tools. And when they're not functional, like a sweater in the heat of summer, you don't necessarily throw it away because it's a very comfortable belief, like Christ or whatever. But you fold it neatly and put it in a drawer for use later when it's cold.
Now, Dr. Miller, my turn, Janet. Dr. Miller, I would like to ask you how to assist members in my social networking groups. I have a lot of people that do use various words, and I know that you are into comparative linguistics. And would you say that those that follow our physics in today's time as theoretical physicists, i.e. Big Bang Theory, and go to all these cons for myths and legends or Comic-Con, there was a movie or a TV show that you started with that I'd like to talk about because they're good actors. But I need to know, how can we come up with a good glossary besides the Ascension glossary that many of us starseeds? Because I understand what you're saying and how to be at both places, and I use a different point of origin than most.
Sure.
Off the planet. I don't start with my point of origin in my physical container. Now, can you tell me, is that what many of us starsea are in that linguistic code?
It's the way John Bohm, a mathematician, wrote a major work called The Implicate Order. He did it in the 80s, later after the theoretical holographic concept of reality. Now, Bohm's concept was to distinguish between different similarities and similar differences. It's the way we chunk into a system of what we call memes. And that led to a group called cybernetic anthropology. By the best reading on that would be Brain, Symbol, and Human Experience by Laughlin, D'Aquili, and McManus. It's a textbook I used when I taught metaphysics at Harvard. I taught metaphysics at Harvard for 11 years as a graduate level course. And John Mack took my course in the third course I taught of 15 courses. And at that time, that's why he started his alien abduction studies. And I went right straight into him as his teacher, and I said to him, you're not going to prove the existence of God with these studies. What you can do as a clinical psychiatrist is treat the malady or wound that these people have encountered. And that's what his whole studies were about, not trying to prove if aliens are real or not, because how could they not be?
Well, David Bowie,
imagination is reality. How could they not be?
John Mack was a colleague of my husband's, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, and they studied together Understand Groth. So they were looking at non-ordinary states of consciousness, and they studied for 2 years. They were in the second level Groth certification right when all this stuff was coming out. So you guys hung together. Like you were very, you're contemporaries of each other. My husband's 78 years old, and you're.
I'm 75. Yeah.
Right, and I don't know how old John Mack would be if he was.
And I smell that. Well, John's dead now, but and that, by the way, John got killed because he was in France looking the wrong direction when he stepped out into traffic. It wasn't.
Well, he was actually in the UK. He was talking to.
Oh, UK. Excuse me. Yes, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was but the traffic. Yeah, he looked the wrong direction. I mean, it's a metaphor.
That's what they say. But
well,
I walked with him, and I walked with him several times in New Mexico when we were at a conference together, And John wasn't a klutz like that. He didn't ever like walk out in front of cars. They were saying he was absent-minded and did shit like that, but he didn't do that. I walked with him all through the streets. He never.
Well,
I have been nearly bushwhacked in Australia. Same thing. You get into habits of the way you do something, and when you go into a different universe where they've switched the goals on you, and red is up is no longer down. That's Jimi Hendrix. Right. And well, what happens next is there's a paradigm shift, and what's needed is a way to handle it. That's Gregory Bateson. What is your metaphor but to serve your paradox?
Dr.
And
Miller,
so, of course, I'll have 2 ox out in my meadow.
Dr.
Paradox.
Miller,
just kidding.
Us talking
paradox.
Together,
Yes.
I'd like to create for people listening that follow us in social media. We have various groups that people come together in the UFO Association or in the UFO Secret Space Command. And I'm sorry that Dr. Our Ken's not here. I'm sure you would have appreciated speaking with him. But the one we call Fleet Commander, how can you help me help others in all these social media groups that we're bringing together? The 50th anniversary of MUFON is coming up. And a lot of people that I work with, I don't know that they'll be able to make it because times are tough with the financial arrangements in the world right now, which you can appreciate. But
I think there's going to be more disclosure. I'm not talking about Greer either. I think that, I don't know about Trump, but I'm going to say that there is a number of military in my universe that now want to give more disclosure to the public. And there are things that artifacts, stuff like on the moon. That so-called spacecraft that's crashed on the other side of the moon that nobody can see, it's probably Buddhist. And we've been here before, Vermont. We have had flying machines. It's right now they're excavating down near Popo in down south of in Mexico, the Clovis culture that they're uncovering. And it turns out they had spaceflight. You go over to France and you look in the Cave of Dreams, and this bison on the wall, surrounded by a caveman. Well, it has dots around its eye. It's a perfect star map. And you go further of space. You go further south, and the star maps are in reverse because they were witnessed from space. And we've been here before. Well, there's no question. I've been to Antarctica. I did that for another project, and I've seen things that I don't understand. And the big one that bothers me most about Antarctica is that when I saw the Nazi bases, there were 19 slips there. Down further was a Viking base from the 14th century. Where is that in the history books? The island of Thule, which is where they staged everything going into Antarctica, is what the Thule Society was all about. Here we have comic books coming in with Hellboy again. I mean, that is the purpose of Hollywood, is that once an idea has gelled in a science eye, let's say, they put it to movie, and that's what makes it real.
So if we put it in a movie, it becomes real in today's reality. Is that what you're saying,
That's correct.
Doctor?
Yes.
And this reality is a dream state.
So
it's a temporary place. We're here for only a few moments, and we come back periodically and there are individuals that have genetic memory, like the Dalai Lama.
Right.
There's different kinds of life forms on Earth. And there's Pierce Brosnan did a movie called Nomads that is very accurate. When I worked for the military, they sent me in to weird places to check out life forms, Bigfoot, a Wendigo, that kind of thing. And I've encountered things that I have no explanation for what it means. My mouth is open in disbelief. I'm catching flies.
What have you personally seen in terms of
I did a shapeshifter.
non-ordinary?
I did a shapeshifter in Oregon. The shapeshifter that I did was in Grants Pass, where I live now. I was here about 42 years ago. The shapeshifter was looked like a coyote, and it was maybe 100 yards from me, and it looked at me, and rather than bolting, it came straight at me, and just before it reached me, it turned into a wisp of smoke between my legs. Another thing that I've seen was the Oregon vortex. That was one that bent light. I had an interferometer in an aircraft at 20,000 feet, and that phenomena was bending light at 20,000 feet. And there's only one thing in nature that I know of that will bend light like that, and that's a mini black hole. And that's Captain Cathay and the harmonic 33 and some of the other things where they talk about node lines. There are anomalies in the Earth that bend certain kinds of light. But right now, the Mississippi River is what is stopping the weather going across the river like a witch. You want to get a witch off your tail, you cross running water. You know, the old mythologies. But the Mississippi, for example, everything on this side of the Mississippi is under flood and having what we call a bomb tornado, and the other side is starting to be spring. How does that work?
So how is that working?
Well, okay, I can tell you that the Russians, back when I was studying, we knew about aliens at the time I was doing my studies in the 70s, but we were more concerned about what Russia was doing, and so while aliens were important, they aren't to the level that they are today. The Russians were and what they were doing. Now, the Russia didn't have high-end technology, but Czechoslovakia did. And that psychic discoveries behind the Iron Curtain that Ostrander and Schroeder wrote about, there were some dead-on things, and one of them was called cosmobiology. And they still use that, where the storms on Jupiter affect man's consciousness here on Earth, just like the tides do. They called those tactic tides, and Jupiter and Uranus. It turns out that when a woman is born, there is a biological clock that is ingrained in her on the phase angle of the moon, the earth, and the sun. And that was Janev's work called the lunar sex cycle of the woman. And she ovulates when it's in this position. If she moves to a different part of the earth, that ovulation cycle changes, just like the geography. Well, the one I did was planet Uranus. Planet Uranus is so far away, there is no known laws on how it can affect the planet Earth, and yet, when it was in a specific geometry with this and the Earth and the Sun, there was a 99.9975% probability of a major earthquake. That was called, the Department of Interior did that study. And they wanted a precursor to predicting earthquakes. Today, Suspicious Observer and others are using the sun, but originally it all came out of cosmobiology, which was the difference between astronomy and astrology.
So what are they using to create that difference between the sides of the Mississippi? Are they is it kind of HARP technology?
At this juncture, the New Madrid fault line has got some other anomalies on it that I can't tell you. Well, it's because of running water and creating an ion drive. Nobody knows. We're speculative right now. It's open for question, just like ley lines are and what they mean. Feng Shui, the Chinese concepts of balance. I don't know.
You don't know.
I can tell you.
Can you speculate what is causing these besides pollution and the impact?
I think there's an electromagnetic balance going on inside the Earth that the fault lines represent. I think that we're not a molten core. I think we're a plasma. Like others have suggested, a plasma universe. And if that's so, well, we have several North Poles right now. One's moving and one is stationary. We have a magnetic one. And that's where the pressures on the Earth sometimes come from behind, not from the sun. We in 2010, the Earth went through what are known as dragon tails in deep space,